You're coming in with $500 billion, but now I hear you're building all over India. I don't want you building in India.
That wasn't a campaign rally. That was Donald Trump face-to-face with Apple CEO Tim Cook, delivering a threat disguised as advice. And just like that, the world's most powerful tech company found itself at war with a former US president. Apple didn't blink. They didn't apologize. They doubled down on India and shipped millions of iPhones from New Delhi straight to American homes. But here's the twist no one saw coming. Apple may have won that fight and still be losing the war. Because while Tim Cook was dodging tariffs and pleasing investors, Apple started slipping on AI, on innovation, on loyalty from American consumers. So, the question isn't just where Apple builds its iPhones, that it's whether Apple still belongs to America at all. It started with a handshake and ended with a warning. Tim, you're my friend, but we're not interested in you building in India. Those were Trump's words, delivered not on a stage, but in a quiet, tense meeting with Apple CEO Tim Cook. And they weren't just casual remarks. They were a red line. For years, Apple had been shifting production out of China, not to bring jobs back to the US, but to build a new manufacturing hub in India. The logic was clear. India was cheaper, politically safer than China, and eager to become the next global factory. Apple thought it had found the perfect workaround to Trump's tariffs. But Trump wasn't impressed. In a matter of days, he blasted Apple publicly 3 times in 4 days, accusing the company of turning its back on American workers. He wanted one thing: iPhones made in America.
But to bring all of that overseas, bring all of that somewhere in the United States would create just an enormously expensive iPhone.
And he wasn't wrong. Manufacturing analysts estimate a US-built iPhone could cost as much as $3,000. That would destroy Apple's pricing model and cripple sales. Tim Cook faced a brutal choice: manufacture in America and sacrifice Apple's profit margins, or defy Trump and risk political retaliation. In the end, Apple chose a third path: say nothing and keep building in India. But Trump's attack wasn't really about economics. It was about symbolism. In his eyes, Apple represented a betrayal of MAGA, an American giant feeding foreign economies while American factories went dark. And in that moment, Apple learned something Wall Street had forgotten: political loyalty matters, especially in an age where supply chains cross borders, but nationalism ignores them. That was the moment Apple's real problem began, not with factories, but with perception. Because Trump wasn't just asking where the iPhone is built. He was asking who Apple is really building for. India wasn't Apple's first choice, it was its last resort. For years, the company avoided setting up major operations there. India demanded that 30% of components be sourced locally, a rule Apple didn't want to play by. But as pressure mounted from China's instability and Trump's tariffs, Apple caved. The rules changed, and Apple moved in fast. In 2023, Apple opened its first physical stores in Mumbai and New Delhi. And by 2024, over 12 million iPhones were sold in India, making it Apple's 4th largest market. On paper, it looked like a win. In reality, it was a fragile pivot. India is still a challenging environment. High import duties, fragmented infrastructure, and intense competition from cheaper Android brands. The same iPhone that sells for under $1,000 in the US can cost more than the average Indian's monthly income.
They need a lot more capacity in India to produce the approximately 65 million iPhones sold here in the United States each year.
That's the core tension. Apple is not building in India for Indians. They're building there to serve American buyers, trying to bypass Chinese risks and American tariffs. But that strategy rests on unstable ground. Infrastructure bottlenecks, political uncertainty, and growing regulatory scrutiny in India could turn Apple's Plan B into a logistical nightmare. And while Tim Cook praises India as the next great tech hub, the numbers tell a murkier story. Apple's market share in India is only 8%. The rest is dominated by budget brands like Xiaomi, Samsung, and Oppo. So, while Apple might be making more iPhones in India, they're not selling them there. It's a shell game. Manufacture here, ship there, and hope no one notices the contradiction. But people are noticing, including Trump. because what he sees is an American company using foreign soil to avoid American responsibility. And for a growing number of American voters, that feels like betrayal. Apple may have thought India would be a solution, but it might just be the beginning of a much bigger problem. While the headlines fixate on tariffs and factories, Apple's deeper crisis is unfolding quietly within its own walls. Behind the shiny new stores and sleek supply chain maneuvers, something critical is missing: momentum. Apple's dominance was built not just on supply chains, but on its ability to stay one step ahead in innovation. But in the most defining race of the decade, artificial intelligence, Apple is falling behind.
Of all the big technology companies, they're behind more than anyone else. And there are philosophical issues, management issues, prioritization issues, financial issues, perhaps even innovation issues.
Siri was once a marvel. Now it's outdated, overshadowed by ChatGPT, Alexa, and Google's AI tools. While competitors raced forward, Apple hesitated. Internal debates, leadership gaps, and fragmented priorities slowed progress. Even with the high-profile hiring of former Google AI chief John Giannandrea, Apple's AI efforts never reached liftoff. And the world noticed. Investors are asking questions. Developers are frustrated. Consumers, especially younger ones, are drifting toward ecosystems that feel smarter, faster, more intuitive. For a company that used to lead, Apple is now reacting. That's a dangerous place to be. It's not just AI. Across its product line, Apple has been criticized for playing it safe: fewer design leaps, more iterative upgrades, and rising prices without groundbreaking features. Meanwhile, Samsung, Microsoft, and even smaller players like OpenAI are capturing the excitement that once defined Apple. At the exact moment Apple needed to reinforce its leadership in technology, it became entangled in geopolitical games and took its eye off innovation. And that's where Trump's pressure cuts even deeper. Because the more Apple is forced to play defense on where it builds, the less it can focus on what it builds. Apple might survive this trade war, but if it loses its edge in innovation, it won't matter where the iPhone is made. The world will simply move on. Apple's shift to India wasn't just a business decision, it was a geopolitical maneuver, and it's forcing global powers to rethink where loyalty lies. For India, Apple is more than just another foreign investor. It's a validation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's decade-long push to make India the world's next manufacturing powerhouse. Hosting Apple isn't just economic, it's symbolic. It signals that India can replace China in the supply chain hierarchy. But Trump's pressure on Apple also puts Modi in an awkward spot. Publicly, he celebrates Apple's expansion. Privately, his administration is caught between maintaining business ties with the U.S. and not appearing weak in the face of foreign demands. Trump, meanwhile, isn't just targeting Apple, he's sending a message to every U.S. company operating abroad: you can't build there and sell here without consequences. That strategy could spark something bigger. If Apple faces tariffs for producing in India, other tech giants like Tesla, Google, or Nvidia may slow their diversification plans. Global supply chains, already rattled by COVID and Ukraine, could fragment even further. And if India pushes back against the pressure, the U.S. might find itself in a trade standoff with one of its most promising strategic partners, a country with 1.4 billion people, a growing consumer base, and an emerging tech ecosystem that America will need. Apple thought it was sidestepping a U.S.-China Cold War. Instead, it may have started a U.S.-India one. And in that fight, there may be no winners, only new lines drawn. While Apple battles in boardrooms and trade corridors, the ripple effects are landing where it hurts most, on Main Street. In theory, consumers shouldn't care where an iPhone is made. But when tariffs hit, supply chains scramble, and uncertainty mounts, the cost always trickles down. At Walmart, prices are rising. At Best Buy, inventory is inconsistent. And for middle-class families already stretched thin, a $1,000 phone suddenly feels like a luxury they can't justify. That's where Trump's message hits hardest, not in Silicon Valley, but in working-class kitchens across America. He frames the issue as betrayal, American companies growing rich abroad while American workers are left behind. It's a message that resonates, and not just with Trump supporters. Many Americans, regardless of politics, are asking a simple question: why are we importing products from nations we're constantly in conflict with? Apple might see India as strategy, but voters see it as abandonment. And in an election cycle fueled by economic anxiety, perception is power. So, while Tim Cook runs numbers, Trump runs narratives. And in today's America, narratives often win. The battle over Apple's supply chain isn't just about global economics. It's about who pays the price and who gets left behind. This story began with a single sentence: "We're not interested in you building in India." But behind that line was a deeper question, one that now echoes far beyond Apple's boardroom. What happens when the companies we trusted to lead America no longer build here, hire here, or innovate here? What happens when global strategy replaces national responsibility? Apple isn't the villain, but it may be the warning. Because if a company this large, this wealthy, this powerful, still can't make things work in America, what chance does anyone else have? So now the choice belongs to us. Do we want cheaper phones built overseas or jobs and factories that stay onshore? Do we punish companies for leaving or ask why they had to leave in the first place? Tell us in the comments, because the real question isn't about Apple's future. It's about ours.